Hello, everybody. I think we are just about there. A couple of seconds here, and we're going to be starting on a very interesting subject. Hopefully, it's going to be interesting for a lot of people. I hope it will be. So, let me start off. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me. This is Michael Voss. I am the Dragon of the Southern Tier, and I am happy to be here with you on No Soundbites Allowed. And I hope that it's going to be an interesting hour with you, maybe even a little bit more. But I want to talk about a lot of subjects and a lot of different issues and things that are going on right now in our nation. And there's so many contradictions. There's so much of a loss of agency. There are so many ways that we are seeing people being separated. And I want to address a bunch of that and really focus in on what can we do better? Or at least, what are your thoughts about it? I mean, how do you feel about this? What are you hearing? What are we seeing in the media? And it's a tough one today. This is a really tough subject and a little bit tricky for me because there's so many things that in the last week, in just the last couple of days, that I've been following in the news, and I want to address for everybody. And I'm going to try to do my very best to do that. And hopefully we can get a good conversation. Keep in mind, you can always text in on the commentary of the show. You can reach us at 607-242-1582. That's for calls, or if you want to leave a text. You can also reach us at MV Consult on Twitter. You can also reach us at Facebook at the Voss Political Commentary. We're live on all of those, as well as, of course, the YouTube stream at No Soundbites Allowed. And I look forward to seeing everybody's comments because I want to hear from you guys. So let me jump off with the first thing first, okay? And that is that today is Father's Day. And I hope that every father that is out there is having a fantastic day, that you are having the day that you always would want to have, surrounded by love and family and friends. I think that's critical and important. I hope you are having that day. And I hope that everyone, every child out there is aware of their father, that their father is in their life, and this is a positive impact. I know it's never a perfect world. That isn't always the case, but I hope it is for you who are watching this, because that makes a big impact in the life of any child. And on the screen, as you can see here, and I'm going to expand a little bit, that's my father. That is Santiago Vasquez, otherwise known as Chago. And really, you better call him Chago, or you used to. My father passed away many years ago, and I still miss him, and I'm sad to have his loss. The picture is from the 1970s. I had to be under 10 years old at the time. One of the things you may not notice about my dad has a fake arm. He lost half of his arm. He lost half of his leg. He's a Vietnam veteran, and he suffered from PTSD as well as Agent Orange. I love my father. I loved him dearly. And he wasn't the perfect man, but he was a good man in his own way. And he helped make me the man I am, as well as my mother, absolutely as well as my mother. And she gets a lot of credit for who I am today as well. But I want to point something out about my dad. He's a one-armed, one-legged man. And you could never tell him he couldn't do something. Not possible. And he instilled that in me in my life. You can't say, you can't do that. No one would dare say that to him. My father, a one-armed, one-legged man with PTSD and a bunch of other issues, was a farmer. He could swim better than I could. He could build anything you could think of. And basically, every time you gave him the challenge of, you can't do that, he went out and did that. Now, I want to bring that up about my father because it's a kind of important thing. It kind of fits into what we're talking about. My father had full agency over his life. The fact that he was disabled, the fact that he had challenges in his life, the fact that he made bad and good choices in his life did not stop him from going forward with his life and doing the best that he could at any given moment. He had agency. And when people say that nowadays, they say, well, do you have agency? Taking away someone's agency or giving them agency. Basically, making sure you have choices for yourself. That's an individual process. The government did not give my father agency. And organizations, political organizations, did not give my father agency. He made the agency himself. He made decisions himself. And when he made those decisions, he lived by that. And he instilled that in me. That's why when I see something that's really upsetting right now are things like this. And what you're seeing there is what's happening around the nation at the moment. Okay? Expunging your white guilt, submitting to Black Lives Matter, submitting to the will of others about race. That's wrong because it's destroying agency for everyone. No one has a choice anymore. You don't get to choose. And I don't agree with this. I don't agree with this image that's on the screen, and I understand in reading the comments that this is supposed to be a commentary, a satire, but I don't care if it's real or not. There are a lot of people out there who are apologizing for being born a certain race, a certain gender, a certain belief. It doesn't matter. And I will tell you, I absolutely reject that. My father would absolutely reject that. How dare you say I can't or I have to submit? And we should all be saying that right now. That's something that's very important because that's a powerful image. And that is the image that is going around this nation everywhere, from the CHAZ or the CHOP to discussions about the 2020 election, whether it's presidential or otherwise. Let's understand something here. You all have agency. You're watching this right now. That's agency. You are doing that. That is your choice. You get to make that choice. Facebook should never deny you that opportunity. Twitter and social media should not deny you that opportunity. The government should never deny you that opportunity. And God forbid, there is no organization, especially political ones, that should deny you that opportunity. And anyone that does is bad. And I'm talking about people like Black Lives Matter, political leaders of tomorrow, the KKK, Antifa, you name the organization that says you can't have your own beliefs, they are wrong. They're the worst thing possible. They're destroying your agency. And I'll give you an example of what I mean. Well, let me explain what I mean. When you listen to people say, well, you have to apologize for being a certain color, that automatically means that every other color is better than whatever it is you're apologizing for. So in this case, if you're apologizing because you're white, you are telling people that everyone else is better than you than being white. And that means whites are inferior. That is absolutely absurd. That's a form of slavery. And when you hear someone say that, you have to stand up and go, no, I do not accept that. How dare you ask me that? How dare you ask me to submit and say that I am lesser for being a certain color? The same thing can be said for being black. And in fact, when you hear people say, well, other people have to, the Black Lives Matters thing, people have to acknowledge your life. Well, wait a minute. If they are defining your life by your color, then you've already limited who and what you are. You're no longer a human being, you're a color. How dare you? I had a gentleman attack me on Facebook saying, skin folk aren't kinfolk. In other words, you're not black enough, because he didn't agree with my political stance on one of the candidates that I support. Well, that's absolutely absurd. You know what? Someone else doesn't get to define whether or not I am black or how black I am. Being black is not a commodity, nor is being white or being Hispanic or being Asian. You don't get to define that. Some organization, some political ideology doesn't get to define that and take away the choices in your life because they don't like it. That's wrong. And I know I'm picking on Black Lives Matter and Plot right now, and it's very unpopular, but quite honestly, you could apply this to so many other things. But the more important thing is, your agency is yours. No one ever needs to apologize for being whatever they were born. And nobody has a right to define what it is you are. No one gets to arbitrarily say, you're not black, you're not white, you're not Hispanic unless you do X. How dare you? And we as a nation really should stand up and say this more often. How dare you try and define me as an individual based on my skin color, my gender, my sex, my sexual preference? You don't get to do that. That is wrong, because I am not just a male. I am not just a black or a Hispanic male. I'm not just a 50-year-old guy. I happen to be Michael Vasquez, and I happen to be black and Hispanic. I happen to be 50 and straight. Are those things defining me? No. What defines me is I'm Michael Vasquez, and I've been out here, some 900 videos, 2,000 articles. I'm me. I have certain beliefs that I have. And no one gets to tell me those beliefs in my life is right or wrong because it doesn't match some political agenda. How dare you? And everyone should say that. Everyone in America should say that. And you should seriously question any organization that says to be X, like Joe Biden, to be black, you have to vote Democrat. How dare you say that? How dare you say that? How dare you tell millions of people, 14% of this nation, and tell them they can't be what they see in the mirror every morning. They can't be who they are and what they were born to be unless they submit to a political ideology that advances Joe Biden and his political opportunism. How dare you say that? That's something that we're not hearing in America, and we really should, because one day this image is going to go from being black and white to white and black or Hispanic or Asian. Intermix any organization and group you want, and you will be in this picture either standing up or kneeling down. And that's not right. That's not right. And I'm more than willing to say that, and I'm more than willing to take the slings and arrows that are going to come to me for having said that. Because someone needs to, because we need to stand up and say, that's wrong. We can't accept that. And this feeds into a bunch of other things. There's contradictions all over the place. And that's something else I want to get into today, is the contradictions of all this. We're saying that you can only, going by the Black Lives Matter, the progressive leaders of tomorrow, the Antifa mindset that says that you can only be black by putting down other people. That's a contradiction. You can't say I'm equal because someone else is made to be worse. We see that in movies all the time. Look at all the latest pro-feminist movies out there. Rey, Star Wars, the most recent trilogy. What's going on? Rey is great because everyone else is an idiot. No one can achieve anything. The latest Charlie's Angels movies, which flopped, was because they were super great. Everyone else was an absolute idiot. Well, that's not compelling. That's not life, and that's not realistic. That's not worthwhile. No one should be trying to achieve that. You don't raise yourself up by lowering people down. You raise yourself up by raising everyone up and doing better. When I look at this, I see this in all kinds of media right now, and I have a dozen different articles I have in front of me that I want to get into. And I do want to mention, Gary Hinckley mentioned, you tell him, Mike, independence is our right and our heritage. Absolutely it is. It is absolutely our right. And no one gets to take that away from us because of some arbitrary political goal. And trust me, don't trust me, look it up. Black Lives Matter has a political goal. They have an agenda. You see progressive leaders of tomorrow, plot. They have an agenda. You look at Antifa. They have an agenda. These are organizations that have a goal. They're political organizations. By definition, they have a goal. They want something, in particular a socialist nation. That doesn't mean that you have to follow them at all. You have the right to choose. And it's one of the biggest contradictions in America right now is you can't say something against these organizations unless you're a racist. You're not black if you say if you don't agree with Plot or Black Lives Matter, well, you can't be black and you must be a racist. Why? Why? Why do I lose my ability, my agency, to be able to say that I can choose? If I am free, and in America we are, and if I have a mind and intelligence, which we do, then I get to choose for myself. And if you don't agree with that choice, that doesn't mean I'm not worthy, that I'm somehow evil or lesser. It just means I made a choice. Period. And we see this in so many things. And I think we really need to address this. Because when you say that someone has white privilege, what you're saying is everyone else is lesser. That somehow they are inherently not worthy. that they are somehow not capable, that they don't have a choice. And if you're saying that there is white privilege out there, and you're saying that whites have to change the system, they have to change their lives, they have to apologize for being alive, which you are also saying at that very same moment is minorities, whether they be women or Asians or Hispanics or black, don't have the power to make a change, that they are incapable of being able to take care of their lives and make choices and make an impact on the world. I do not accept that. I do not accept that at all. I will never accept that. I have agency. I can impact the world. I don't need someone else to apologize and change the world for me to be able to make an impact. I don't need an organization to tell me that I have to submit to them so that they can make a change for my life. It's my life. It's your life. You can make a change anytime you want, and you could potentially change the world. Martin Luther King didn't become a progressive to be able to change the world. In fact, progressives didn't really exist then, for the most part. Martin Luther King changed the world because he made a difference, because he chose to do so. Gandhi changed the world because he chose to do so, not because he submitted to the will of a political party. Malcolm X changed the world because he made a choice, not because he submitted to an organization. And yes, he was part of the Louis Farrakhan, the Muslims, the American Muslim organization, Nation of Islam. There it is. Even though he was part of Nation of Islam, he didn't use that. He didn't submit to that. He made his own path through his own understanding of religion, of himself, of America, and made an impact. That's the full story of Malcolm X as an example. You can do the same. You don't need Black Lives Matters to make your life matter. You don't need progressive leaders of tomorrow to be able to take over and lead tomorrow. You can do that all by yourself. You have that power. And in America, that power is celebrated because we, the people, make up this government, and we can change anything. And all it takes is you making a decision to do so. And if someone says you can't do that without them, they are using you. Whether it's emotionally or politically, they're manipulating you to get something they want, whether or not you want it as well. That is my firm belief. If you disagree with me, that's perfectly fine. You can, because we're in a free nation, but that's the way I see it, and it lines up perfectly with what is being presented out there right now. And you can disagree with me, but if you want to call me a racist for that, I'm sorry, you're going to have to try a little bit harder. So I want to get into that. I also want to get into some of these other contradictions we see happening out there. Do you know that just yesterday, one of the big news events was that President Trump was going out and he had a campaign and he wanted to go to this event in Tulsa, and it had 19,000 people for the stadium. And we're hearing today how TikTok, they tricked the president. It's a failure. It was horrible. It didn't work. Again, let me go back to what I was saying before. This is people who are manipulating you. This is an agenda. So they're saying that all these young kids, they bought up all these tickets, made it look like the 1 million people wanted to be at this event. There was supposed to be an outside event and it didn't happen. And this is a failure for the president. Hang on, stop. Some 6,300 people actually did go to the event. 6,300 people. And that was what was planned. The event was planned to have 6,300 people there because of COVID, so they didn't want to fill the event fully. More importantly, there were 6,300 people who showed up to hear the president speak. Let me ask you a question. How many people showed up to listen to Joe Biden? And I can tell you that Joe Biden, going back, and this is from Politico, and by the way, as always, links will be at the end of the discussion, but Joe Biden himself has always had a problem of having anyone show up at his events. This is, the story I have on right now. This is from May 28th of 2019. nobody was caring to be around Joe Biden. He couldn't get hundreds of people to show up, let alone thousands. And according to the New York Times, on June 21st, that's today, we see that there were not dozens of people to listen to Joe Biden speak. That's it, dozens. He couldn't get a crowd of thousands. And somehow, we're hearing the news media tell you that thousands of people is a failure. How is that a failure? You can't get dozens of people to appear for Joe Biden. You have thousands appearing to listen to President Trump. Joe Biden is a hero and he had a success. President Trump is a failure. He had thousands there. I don't understand that. That doesn't make sense. What is going on here? Does that make sense to you? It's kind of like when we see that all the riots were going around in the nation. And we heard over and over and over again that if there were, that protests they didn't cause any spikes in COVID-19. In my region, and this is an article from one of the local organizations, the local news, and you can see it's News 34, and they're talking about there is no spike in the COVID-19 cases following Binghamton protests, where hundreds, actually over 1,000 people showed up together, and it resulted in nothing, no problem. But yet, at the same time, we were told that a couple thousand people showing up for our president, well, guess what? That was going to cause COVID to come up. We've had people in riots and looting and taking over cities like the CHAZ and the CHOP, and no increases have been attributed to any of that. But what we hear is, but the president, if you go out to see the president, well, that's going to increase COVID and that's going to kill people. I'm sorry, women, you can't have it both ways. That's a contradiction. It doesn't make sense. How can you tell me thousands of people can show up for one event, which is politically to the left, and that's okay, and there's no problem with that, and there's nothing documented wrong with that. But when the right has a similar event, one similar event, that is absolutely going to kill people. That's going to bring in Armageddon. We're going to see the plague come out because the right decided that, oh, we're going to have an event too. What is that? Are we out of our minds, people? What is that contradiction? That contradiction, when you stop and you think about it, that contradiction makes you say, that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense that how 24 people show up at an event, that's a success. When 6,000 people show up at an event, that's a failure. No, that doesn't make any sense. These are contradictions that are being fed to us, that are telling us, and you have to agree with these contradictions that make no sense. Otherwise, well, something is wrong with you because some political organization is saying, well, then you must be a racist. You must be a sexist. You must be a homophobe. You must be all these negatives that I'm sure I'm going to get blocked on YouTube for saying, on Facebook as well. But you're going to be all these things because someone doesn't like that you had an independent thought. My God, that's terrifying. And yes, John mentions go get him, and he also mentions that there are rumors of a VP change. Yeah, I'm going to get to that. There is a rumor of a change in the vice presidency, but I'll get to that in 1 second. But I want to make sure we're understanding the contradictions that we are being expected to absorb and accept on the face of it because some organization is telling you so. And at the moment, we're hearing most of that coming from the left, telling you that you have to agree or else. And I have to say, or else what? Or you're going to tell me that I'm not black enough? Or you're going to tell me that I'm a racist, that I hate myself? How do you get to decide that? Who in the organizations out there are saying, hey, here's the checklist of what makes you black? Is it suddenly a commodity? What about women? Are they women if they happen to believe in marriage? If they happen to believe in being pro-life? Does that make them less of a woman? Do they suddenly lose their birthright of being a woman, not being able to give birth to children, not being able to raise children? Do they lose that opportunity because they don't agree with a checklist by some political organization that has a goal and an agenda? I mean, no one asked this. I haven't heard this in any media. No one says, gee, does that make sense? Is that not a contradiction? And they should. And we all should. At least that's what I believe. But I'm not forcing that on you. I'm telling you what I think. But if you think I'm wrong, please tell me about that. Tell me how you think I'm wrong. Because I'm going to go into another contradiction that makes no sense to me. And you may think I'm wrong. Do you know that right now in Chicago, according to the Chicago Tribune, as of June 11th, 1,290 people have been shot. And that number is up. It's not the highest it's ever been, but it's getting there. And at this very same time, according to the Chicago Tribune, as of June 10th, 239 people have been killed in Chicago this year. Of that, 236 of those people were shot. They died because they were shot. 12 people were stabbed to death. Now, let me ask you a very simple question about that. And this is again from the Chicago Tribune. When you hear that, you have to think, what's going on? Obviously, gun control has failed. It's failed because we have the data in front of us. But you're being told you can't have a gun. At this moment, when we saw the COVID-19 isolation begin, we were told, don't worry, police will come and protect you. Don't protect yourself. You shouldn't have a gun. 2 million Americans went out and bought a gun for the first time because they didn't believe that. You need to be able to protect yourself, although the police were important. We get out of that, and suddenly we're in Black Lives Matters, and we're dealing with these various things like Rayshard Brooks and George Floyd, and suddenly people are saying, well, you have to defund the police. You know what happened when we decided that we wanted to defund the police? Chicago crime has gone up. New York City crime has gone up. We're not helping people by doing this. And in particular, in this article, which is by NBC News, which was published on June 20th, yesterday, there was this particular part I wanted to get into. Quote, there is a large body of evidence that conclusively shows that more police resources and manpower does reduce crime, and that as an empirical fact we have to reckon with. That's by Max Kapustain. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, who's a researcher at the University of Chicago Crime Lab. We wanted to defund the police. This is what we're told from the left. Defund the police. Get rid of the police. We have to, and quite literally, Black Lives Matter wants to get rid of the police because they think the police are evil. They want you to not have that safety net. They also don't want you to have guns. But at the same time, those same people over, and I'm now showing it, the Seattle mayor, Durkin, says that CHAZ is a block party. It's a summer of love. Okay? And this is, again, reported, this article happened to be reported by Real Clear Politics on June 12th, when the Capitol Hill autonomous zone was created by a bunch of leftists who circled and captured territory with American citizens without their approval and just took over some land. And these people, when they did that, the mayor of Seattle said, well, they are good people. They're having a block party. This is a summer of love. Well, let's ask some of the people who are in that block party, in that summer of love. And you know what? You'll find out what happened. There is shootings. We know for a fact that the police chief of Seattle has mentioned that domestic abuse and rapes are up. We know extortion is happening. We know that there is now shootings, that a 19-year-old was killed. Another man was critically injured just yesterday in the Seattle CHAZ. And that's not making anyone safer. And we know that they have agents of the organization, whether it's CHOP or CHAZ, whatever you want to call it, that are going around with knives. And they're out there with guns. And they're trying to quell things. In fact, in this article, which again is from the Washington Post, what they said on the Washington Post yesterday, after 2 a.m., festivities turned violent. That's the Juneteenth festivities. They got violent. One eyewitness described an argument that escalated into a fight and resulted in 10 gunshots. The suspects fled the scene while volunteer medics who were stationed on the same corner rushed to treat the victims. Upwards of 20, quote, sentinels, end quote, who provide volunteer security for the police-free protest zone also responded to the scene. Hang on, let's think about that for a second. Right next to where there was a police station protecting the community, fights and gunshots started ringing out because people were celebrating, and people with guns there who used them poorly decided to use those guns as firecrackers and started shooting up, and this may or may not have led to a shooting in the morning that killed 2 people. Meanwhile, individuals in their security forces, which are otherwise known as police forces, are running around with knives and guns with a warlord in charge of them, Warlord Simone Raz, I believe he is, who are enforcing their will, not laws, their will, by beating down individuals and threats of violence. Tell me how this is not a contradiction. Tell me how the murder of 2 individuals, the potential of fights breaking out nonstop, how is that the summer of love? Tell me how that's a block party atmosphere. Where in the world do you live that people being shot to death is a block party atmosphere? I mean, do you live in the Middle East? Are you talking about Syria? Where are you? Mogadishu? Where are you living that suddenly that's a block party? But we're being told, no, you just don't understand. This is a good thing. Really? Why? Because if you don't agree, you're a racist. How dare you? This is conflicting, contradictory information. It makes no sense. How can you tell me that this is a block party and at the same time you can tell me that fights are breaking out, guns are being used, and people are dying? And this is the reason why we should defund the police. Are you out of your mind? And you can't tell me all of that and say, and there is a political agenda here that you must submit to, or else you don't get to be whomever you wake up and see in the mirror. People, do we see these contradictions? And by the way, you can call in. I want you to be able to call in. Oh, I took it off my face. Here we go. You can call in. You can reach us at 607-242-1582, and you can send a text. You can reach us at MV Consult. You can make a comment at Voss Political Commentary on Facebook. You can make a comment on No Soundbites Allowed on YouTube. I want to hear your thoughts. If you think I am completely wrong, please let me know. If you think I have missed the point, please let me know. If you think that, no, you can define race, some outside organization can tell you whether or not you are black or Hispanic, a woman, a straight, gay, they have a right to tell you what you are in your life, and you have no agency to make a decision otherwise. Please let me, I want to hear that argument. Please do. Tina DeBella writes in, replying to John, I don't believe it at all. The left likes to make it look like there's a dissent, just as they are reporting Trump had a low showing, perhaps because lefties applied to go to the rally and didn't show up and wasted spots for actual fans. Okay, so let me address that a little bit because I want to put it in context. So John is mentioning that there's currently a rumor going around about the vice presidents that are going to be picked for the 2020 election. There's a rumor on the Democratic side, there's a rumor on the Republican side. On the Democratic side, there is a rumor that I believe is going to happen that Kamala Harris is going to be the vice presidential pick. And as a matter of fact, yesterday I happened to highlight that the reason why they're picking her isn't because Kamala Harris is a senator. It isn't because she's qualified, because she's been a DA and that she has served her state very well. No. It's because she's black. Because she looks black, because she isn't, she's Indian, but because she has dark skin color and she's a woman, that's why they want her. Because the qualifications, according to Joe Biden and the Democratic Party, is they need a woman of color for the race, not a qualified person, not the best person, not the best woman even. It's we need a person of color who happens to be a woman. That is gender identity politics screaming at you. And that is telling you that if you disagree with that, well, you're a racist and a sexist, because why wouldn't you want a woman of color in charge? Maybe because that might not be the best person. And if it's not the best person, why are we wasting our time? If the only criteria is the tan that they may or may not have and the gender they have, I'm sorry, you've set the bar a little too low. Raise it up higher. And again, this isn't about whether she's good at her jobs and her career and what she's done in politics. It's about her skin color and her gender. And if that's the only reason why she's on there, Democrats have made a mistake and they deserve to lose, because that is a horrible reason to pick anyone for anything. Now, on the Republican side, there is another rumor that is going around, which is relatively new. And that is, again, this deals with another woman, Elise Stefanik. Elise Stefanik is a representative in upstate New York. I've met her before back in 2016 when I had run for an office. I had a chance to speak with her. She's done a phenomenal job. She's a very accomplished woman, and she's in a re-election race right now for Congress. And she has been an outspoken advocate for her community and for the nation. And she has done such a good job at that many people believe she would make an excellent vice presidential pick. And they're thinking that maybe she would be a wonderful pairing with President Trump to replace Vice President Pence. Now, there is some politics in that. If the Democrats are obviously and absolutely going to pick a woman, that is a fact. They have already said that. And to be able to split the female vote and to give some parity there, maybe the Republicans go with a woman candidate as well for vice president. Not the first time we've done that. And their answer is, well, wouldn't that make sense? Now, notice the difference between the two choices we're talking about. On the one side, we have Elise Stefanik, a representative in Congress who has proven herself to be effective and someone that is well loved, not only within the Republican Party, but within her district and in the nation. She is accomplished. And because she is accomplished, she is being looked at to be given an even more important role in our government. Versus what the Democratic Party is saying is, that's a black woman. Go get her. She fills a box. There is a checkbox. Let's fill that checkbox. Woman, color, done. What has she accomplished? Doesn't really matter. She's a woman and she's a woman of color. We are done. Throw her on the ticket. That balances out the crazy, insane things that Joe Biden has said and continues to say. Let me ask you, which one would you prefer to have? Would you rather have someone who's just filling a box, just filling a seat because of no reason other than the color of skin they have? Or would you perhaps prefer to have someone who actually has accomplished things in their career and is successful and qualified and doing it well? Because Republicans aren't looking at, we need a woman, check a box, and we need someone of color. No, we're saying there's someone who could do the job perhaps better than Mike Pence. And let's give that person that opportunity. Now, that's a rumor, and I personally don't think that's going to happen, but that's a rumor that's out there. And I've heard it from a few people, including John, who's brought it up to me before. And I don't think it's going to happen. But I got to tell you, if it does happen, it makes sense. The most qualified person with the best capability, the most merit, is the one who's going to get the job. As opposed to from the Democratic side, we need to fill a quota. And whether or not they happen to be good or useful or better doesn't really matter. They're filling a quota. Do you see the contradiction? Do you see how that doesn't make any sense? Do you see how belittling that is? And I really feel bad for Kamala Harris in this because I think she's better than that. I don't agree with her politics at all. I think she's wrong in her politics. But I have to tell you, she is more qualified and deserves better treatment than fill the box. That's the worst thing they can say. And to tell me that I'm racist because, well, you can't complain about Kamala Harris being vice president. Yes, I can. When the criteria that she's being picked for is based on her color and her gender and has nothing to do with her qualifications, because gender and color and sexual preference, they're not qualifications. That's not a qualification. Those are choices. Or actually inherent facts. They have nothing to do with whether Kamala Harris is actually intelligent, whether or not she's capable, whether or not she has any kind of position or view. It has nothing to do with her. She is meaningless. She is an object. And she has no agency. And that is insulting, and that is cruel, and that is wrong. As opposed to Republicans who are saying, hey, this woman is not only, she is so accomplished, we want to give her a promotion. I don't know how Democrats can say, no, it's better to just be an object filling a box than being accomplished and being promoted based on merit. I don't understand that. Maybe someone out there who's watching this does understand that. Maybe it makes sense to somebody to say, hey, Mike, this of course makes sense because we want to have people filling boxes based on birthright. You're born a gender, you're born a color, or even worse, according to the very far left, you can assign yourself whatever gender and whatever kind of racial and ethnic kind of background you want. I mean, if I was a Democrat right now, I could be a toaster of one of 32 different genders. And that'd be okay. It's just insane. I'm sorry. That's insane. Just doesn't make any sense. Does not make sense. So I hope that answers, Tina, your comment, John, addressing some of what you were speaking about, because I did want to get back to it. And folks, I am paying attention to everybody's comments. I am here with you, and I do want you to be involved. And don't forget, subscribe on the YouTube channel, please. But we're trying to cover a lot of ground with a lot of different issues here. What is that? Nope. Oh, there it is. And just in case people weren't wondering, there are some of the comments there. But this is just so insane. This is such a crazy world. We have people with Black Lives Matter. They're talking about Juneteenth. I know Anthony Brindisi, great, interesting politician, my congressman. He's putting out comments about Juneteenth. We're watching Nancy Pelosi going out, and she's bending down and wearing African garb, which she's never worn before. She wears it just to make the point. It's pandering. Oh, look, see, I love black people too. Let me put on African garb. Guess what? I'm not African. I'm black. I'm from America. You want to wear African garb? That doesn't make you more sympathetic to who I am. The fact that I happen to be black, and some of my ancestors came from Africa, some of my ancestors came from Spain. Other people who happen to be black may be from the Midwest, the West Indies. They might be from, I don't know, Africa. They could be from almost anywhere in the world. Does wearing a certain outfit make you more or less involved? Because I have to tell you, after 40 years with Nancy Pelosi being involved in government, with Joe Biden having 37 years, with Charles Schumer spending 40 years, with Kirsten Gillibrand spending 13 years in our government every day, they have accomplished nothing for minorities. Blacks are not better off because of anything they have done over the decades upon decades, over 100 years of just those individuals being in office. They haven't fixed the nation. But they want you to believe that because they put on an African outfit temporarily for a photo, that they somehow now have the answer to the racial tensions in America that are created by other people in their own party. And you're supposed to vote for that, or you're a racist. I mean, think about that, folks. Black Lives Matter, Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, Antifa, they are all part of the left. They are part of the Democratic Party. If you think they're not part of the Democratic Party, ask them who will they vote for in any election you want. I don't care what election it is. Ask them. They will always tell you you're going to vote for the Democrats. That's it. They're part of the Democratic Party. And they have an agenda with the Democratic Party. And some people even have found that Act Blue, which is a Democratic fundraiser, helps fund Black Lives Matter. They are a political organization. And this political organization, which is radical, is telling you that you have to submit to blacks. And we watch Nancy Pelosi, who promises that she has an answer. We listen to Joe Biden, who says he has an answer to fix the tensions that Black Lives Matter and Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow are, and Antifa, the racial tensions that they are making in the nation are going to be resolved by that same party under Pelosi and Biden and Kamala Harris. I don't buy it. They're causing the problem. Well, first of all, they ignored the problem, the Democrats. Then they made the problem worse, and now they're promising to fix it. I'm sorry, I don't buy that. At no point are they doing anything good for anyone in this process. They ignored what problems did exist. They went out and they made those problems worse, and now they're telling you, but don't worry, we can fix it. You didn't fix it for 40, 50 years. Why do I think you're going to fix it tomorrow? In fact, you're making it worse right now. Why do I think you're going to make it better tomorrow? Are you telling me that you could fix this, that you have the answer to the racial tensions in America, and the only reason you're not giving us those answers is because you have a political gain you want, because you want an election, you want more power? Is that not selfish, wrong, and evil? If that were the case. And I'm not saying it is, but it could be. Are you telling me that if Democrats were in office, the racial tensions that are being announced by Black Lives Matter, by Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, by Antifa, those elements of the Democratic Party, they would say nothing and there would be no problem as long as we had a Democrat in office? Really? I mean, let's think about that, folks. I know I've been saying a lot here today, and I've been railing nonstop because this is really upsetting stuff. It really, really is. And hang on one second. Hello, this is Michael. No Soundbites Allowed. You should be able to hear us right now. And can you tell me, who are you, caller?
Oh, this is Jason from Bington.
Hey, Jason. Have you been able to hear most of the show?
Yeah, the whole show today.
Okay.
So
what are you thinking?
Yeah, I was just going to make some comments on some of the things you brought up. I mean, let me just, because I write down and I just go through the list here of, kind of what you started out with.
Oh, that's scary.
Yeah, as far as that Trump rally and, the different stats of, the quantity of people, it's interesting because, I think even, people who are watching too, they might actually be just, kind of looking at the numbers on this. And one of the things though is that I noticed that Trump does, and he kind of, I don't know if this is what he purposely does, but he draws attention in certain directions. And I call it kind of the way I almost call it the art of the troll. And so what he'll do is he'll bring people's eyes and attention to a certain stat and statistic, and he wants to expose something else. And one of the things that was kind of revealing was what AOC actually started tweeting out, and how, she was taking pride in the fact that she was, you saw a manipulation of social media, basically over flooding the ticket system, which I don't believe that really had anything to do with anything, and I don't believe the statistic, that sort of thing. But the fact, though, is that she had actually literally said that that was an intent, and that's what she desired to do, and not to mention the fact that when you look at the roots of TikTok and these other organizations, you find out that there's a lot of foreign influence that's within this. And so here we have a situation where we're talking numbers, big crowds. Trump always says that, and then you start focusing in, on this, and then all of a sudden, here you got AOC. Like I said, she's bringing. Then all of a sudden, she brings intention and says, "Ha, we got you." And you're all of a sudden, then you're looking at now we have foreign collusion, manipulation by social media, and these are all topics that basically Trump has wanted to actually point and then link to the left. And within the last couple, it's only been a day, but through the feeds and stuff, I'm starting to see that this is what's starting to trend among conservatives. And then there's a second point to this as well too, is that now that you're seeing this manipulation of social media and the suppression of free speech and ideas, because that's technically she was bragging about doing, it drives and motivates conservatives and the right to say, screw you, you're going to stop me from going out to see Trump, you're going to try to shut our voice down. And what it does, it just amps up this group, and then brings them out in full numbers. And so you'll see the the future rallies is people are just going to backlash against this suppression or this appearance of oppression. And like I was wanted to just say before is that I really truly believe this is something that actually Trump actually knows. And that's why I always joke the fact that this is art of the troll, because he's able to manipulate these individuals and take them and turn them to actually drive more motivation into the conservatives to get them to come out against a lot of these progressives, the AOCs.
Well, let me ask a question there.
Sure.
Because just like we see, and this is an article that came out from National Review on the 18th, that the riots, the protests, all of these actions are making gun ownership more popular, that more people are going out to get guns. Are you saying that in that same way, that because the left is attacking President Trump, and because of the way that they're attacking President Trump, that this is somehow making it better for Republicans, for people who are not part of Antifa or plot, that they're going to be more motivated not only to be involved, but to be involved on Trump's side?
Well, you definitely see that to some degree, but I think there is a fine line between, conservatives and Republicans overall of how they're handling this. Trump, I think that some perception of a way I've saw some of the way the handling of some of the racial things, or like the police, for example, is that one of the things that I didn't really appreciate with him was his actual response to actually putting out new regulations, not really new regulations, but just guidelines for police, in general on a federal level, rather than actually looking down at the lower city levels for them to actually make, the decisions themselves to see where their weaknesses are. And if policy changes need to be made, then that's where they should have been doing. Because obviously, where I've been coming from is that the main, purpose of these riots is not only that, is to make you doubt the police, and also to, push more of a social agenda. So, like I said, certain behaviors like that actually, I think, work in a negative way. But obviously with guns buying and stuff like that, people are definitely afraid. But that, I think, though, could be part of the fact too, though, is maybe people are not in confidence of conservatives and Republicans protecting them as maybe they intend to when they actually vote. And so that could be, some of the negative side effects for it. I have seen, behaviors by Republicans within, our area. Certain people take things differently, like even with our situation at Benkin University with the protests that happened there, with the Republicans and the tabling and then also Arthur Laffer on campus. I think that there was two different, mindsets. One was to, withdraw and pretty much say we're not going to go back on campus, or the other approach was basically to take them head on. Although the thing in contrast that I saw is when Tom Reed, he actually took it head on, and that sort of behavior there, that definitely is very inspiring, and that's the sort of behavior, well, personally, I would like to see, conservatives and Republicans do, rather than ever withdraw, themselves from a conversation,
Right.
or ever appease to any of these sort of ideas that the left is actually the premise they bring forth.
Okay.
Especially like when it comes to law enforcement or systemic racism within the United States, meaning that somehow we've got to make some drastic changes to our legislation system or even our Constitution to make sure that the United States is fair towards minorities or individuals that they define as being prosecuted.
Disadvantaged. They call us disadvantaged peoples, which I think is insulting, because it assumes that by birth, if you're born black, well, then you're disadvantaged. I'm sorry, no, that's not inherently true. Your race doesn't make you inherently disadvantaged. It's what the choices you make may make your life better or worse. But to fill people in a little bit on some of what you were talking about, I want to clarify. When you're talking about Binghamton University, which is a local college here in Broome County, there was an event. College Republicans were holding two events. One was tabling, just letting people know about themselves, and another was an invitation to an economist, Dr. Art Laffer, coming in to speak to the crowd. And at both of those events, mobs of the far left, in particular progressive leaders of tomorrow, swarmed in and aggressively attacked both the students and that speech and shut it down, which again goes to it's the left denying people agency, being able to have a conversation, to be able to talk, and that fits in with what we're talking about here today. It's that same mindset. You can't have a voice, you can't have a thought unless it's approved of, and I personally reject that. But I want people to understand the context of what you were just saying. But go on.
Yeah, you really summed that up really well. And then let's go on to some other stuff you talked about here. Let's talk about Harris. Now, I know you were trying to basically say that she should be judged, pretty much you're saying that she should be judged by the content of her character and not just basically the fact that she has brown skin and then she's a female and that's why they're plugging her into the thing. But the bottom line, though, is that Harris is, part of a party now which fully embraces identity politics. And then this is a term, that's come up is identity socialism. So it's, it's actually moving to the fact that they're trying to actually push a socialist agenda, using identity to, put in a hierarchy of individuals who can really voice their opinion, and that was part of the thing that when we heard about, Biden there saying that, well, you vote for Trump or, that you're not black, that's part of identity politics, because you have to check a certain box, you have to fit a certain characteristic physically, and then that's what you stand for. And that again is an offshoot of a Marxist philosophy, but instead of actually embracing what Marxists used to do with class and class and overall wealth, they've turned it into simply completely identity, and that basically is just the color of your skin and gender and every other way that you choose to identify by. But as far as Harris, though, no, she completely embraces that, and that's what she's being judged by. And there is no the content of character or qualifications that they're looking for. They truly do want to check a box. Now, as far as the Trump administration, now if there are rumors about pulling a female into it, I am against identity politics in all means. I don't believe that anybody, I'm completely against any sort of pulling a person and picking individuals based upon anything other than the character of the individual, because as soon as you move in a direction other than that, then you go down the entire, you justify these identity politics socialists just by actually just even saying that, hey, just for the word saying, oh, we need more, women in politics. Just by that alone gives justification for these identity, politics to be, justified on the left fully. But yeah, so again, here we got the Trump administration, toying around with the idea of actually having a woman in there due to the fact of pulling out more votes. Now, this is it is obviously a political thing, and then we would have to question whether or not. I mean, I think what you're looking at maybe a moderate mindset, and so the question is that are you thinking that moderates are going to choose a person because of their gender or their race, over the fact of what their qualifications are or what their policy and politics actually even are? I mean, do you think that people are going to believe that way? And I think there's a risk of doing that because, again, if you start to go down the path of identity politics and you start to play that, way, I mean, you really truly weaken your core principles, especially as conservatives. I mean, you cannot even go down that route or think that way if that's really, against your conscience to
But
believe that way.
let me interject something here, because the if we're looking at it from the way the left would like us to look at it, as identity and gender politics, okay, I can see. Elise Stefanik shouldn't be the vice presidential pick. I get that. But what if, as I believe, and I believe many people are saying, the reason why they're looking at Elise Stefanik, Representative Elise Stefanik, to get the vice presidency position is because she's that good. She's that successful. The fact that she's a woman and maybe that balances out the arithmetic for the election, that's secondary to the fact that she's just good and maybe she's even better than Michael Pence. That's an interesting question. And that's when I look at it, I'm not seeing, oh, they want to be more gender identity politics, which I think the president has very clearly rejected. I think most people in America have clearly rejected, except for the fringe, which happens to be very loud, of the far left. But the majority of people, they reject that. But would people accept Elise Stefanik because she's successful? I think they would. Do you see it as this is gender identity politics coming into the Republican Party from the left? Or do you see it as she's just that good?
Well, the only true way to actually do this is we'd have to look at through the eyes of conservative. And so what you'll have to do is you'll have to say, look at who are the available nominees, that we would replace Pence with, put them up. Let's line them up. Let's look at their ideology. Look at the way that they see the world. What's their policies, and if you put them all in a row, then we can actually make that judgment call. And honestly, at this point, I mean, this is quite frankly, this is kind of the first I've heard of it. So I don't really have, any way to judge, her in any sort of way compared to anybody. And plus, actually, there's nobody that I would know go against her anyway. So, but yeah, no, I mean, really, it's just you're gonna have to look at it and say, look at, is she really the best option? Does she really have, is she truly the person that will help, Trump bring, our country and put our country on the path, especially through recovery and everything else that we're going to be going through after the coronavirus, and then also obviously dealing with all the different issues that we have. So I don't know. I mean, like I said, I would have to, really. But the simple fact, though, is that they just all of a sudden pulled a woman into it, just kind of spontaneously. I mean, it does kind of reek of identity politics to me.
But it's still a rumor.
But I could be proven wrong.
It's still a rumor. I mean, and there's always rumors in election seasons, especially this crazy election season that we have. But I can tell you, in my knowledge of, and again, I'm not part of the election team for President Trump or for Elise, who's up for re-election. Even though I have met her, I can't tell you anything on the inside of her politics, nor would I. What I can tell you is that, is she qualified? Yes. Is she someone who could be a vice president? Possibly. Is this rumor going out because of the Democrats? I don't think so. But it is a rumor right now, and I think a lot of people are doing a lot of election math, as always happens the summer before an election. So this could just be smoke in the air. And in particular, I don't think Mike Pence has done a bad job as vice president. I think he's done a better job than Joe Biden did when he was vice president. So I don't know that this is actually going to happen, but I've heard about it. And since John brought it up, I want to address it.
Yeah, it's, I'm just thinking about the identity politics, and then also too is what we actually define as being good. Because the thing is, though, is that
Mm-hmm.
if you think about the agenda of the Democrat Party and
Mm-hmm.
the socialist direction that the party's moving in, and their ideology, then if you wanted to plug somebody in to actually carry out that agenda, then Harris honestly is a really good job if you want a socialist country. I mean, as a Republican and a conservative individual, you tell me, do I want her in there? It's like, obviously I don't, but I'm not a Democrat. I don't have that agenda. I don't want to push that through. Will she be able to gain traction and empathy from the Democrats if she's in there? Yeah, they're total identity politics. So is that a good match for them to, fulfill their agenda? I would have to say absolutely, you know. But as a conservative, do I want her in there? Do I want Biden in there? No, I don't. I don't want their
But
policies. I don't want the direction
but I don't
of
think
the
it's about
country going that
policy.
way. Huh?
I don't think it's about policy. Kamala
You know,
Harris is not being picked because she wants to get rid of guns, as she has said she would do if she was in the executive office. That's a fact. She's already said that. So it's not her position on the Second Amendment or many other issues. It's very simply and very exclusively she's a woman of color and she is a woman. Those are the first, that's one and two, the reasons why they want her on the ticket. Not because of her politics, but because of her skin and because of her gender. That's it. Another way to put it, she's got a tan and boobs. That's why they want her on that ticket. And if that is the reason, I don't know how Democrats can say, rank and file Democrats, not progressives, rank and file Democrats that make up the Democratic Party. I don't know how they can say that's reason enough. That's not a qualification. And that's my big argument about it.
yeah, well, that's a good point. I mean, I kind of question the direction of the Democrat Party and actually a lot of
Mm-hmm.
individuals and what they actually truly feel, because quite frankly, they're kind of drowned out by most of what we would define as, I guess, as being radicals. I mean, like I said, I mean, identity politics seems to be where the party's at. That's what they're controlled by. And if you are a Democrat, that's what you're voting for. So it's like, I don't know where a Democrat who doesn't embrace identity politics at this point stands, or where they are in the party. I don't think the party embraces anything other than identity politics. I mean, maybe on a local level you can argue differently, but when it comes to the main party line, well, actually even locally, I mean, geez, I mean, the frickin' plot and the progressive leaders tomorrow, Citizen Action, they pretty much you don't kowtow to them, or you reject them, they'll be doxing and trying to destroy you. And it has happened to
They're doing it
Democrats
to
in this
me.
area. So I
Oh,
don't
they're
know.
not just Democrats, they're doing it to me. They've done
Oh
it
yeah,
to
I
other
know that you,
Democrats.
but they should do it to you, because that's their idea. What I'm saying though is for them to actually do it against their own party. Now that is where it gets dicey, when they start eating themselves alive.
Oh, okay.
That's where it's interesting.
Well, then to give context to that so people know what you're talking about with that, there was Councilwoman Danny, Danny Krantz. Councilwoman Danny Krantz in the Binghamton City Council was ostracized by the Democratic Party, and in particular, Plot and Black Lives Matters, when she was in office. Also, it is said that uh, City Councilman, what's his name, Taylor, what was his first name? Oh God, Conrad Taylor. Councilman Conrad Taylor was forced out of seeking re-election because he was not radical enough, because he was not a member of or a vocal member of Plot, and therefore was not attacking Republicans every day, and because he wasn't active enough and argumentative enough in city government, he was removed, and in his place, Aviva Friedman, a known supporter of Plot, was put into the position instead. This is the context of what you're talking about. If you're not active enough in local politics the way that Plot or Black Lives Matters and progressives would like, they kick you out of the party essentially and put someone else in place that will play ball. That's essentially what to give it context. So I just want to give context for people who don't know what you're talking about, Jason, to let them know what you're talking about there. Okay.
Yeah, you again, you perfectly summed up my point, and actually brought the people's names and the whole content of exactly what was happening in our community. And that is what it is. That's where we're at. And so The question is, like we were, like I'm saying though, is just that where where can Democrats even go or say? And even, you even question too is your own opponent. I mean, what kind of corner will he be backed into? At some point by these individuals. I mean, obviously at this
Yeah.
point there is no they're not going to primary him out, but at some point they're definitely going to come for his seat, because he's just, I don't even know what sort of policies or what he's actually done, so I can't really say whether or not.
I think nobody does.
Yeah, I don't think anybody does either.
One of
So
the
it's
reasons, not to get into my political race, because that's not the environment I want to get into, but yeah, I've asked a lot of Democrats before I decided to run for this race, what's he done? No one can give me an answer. So, yeah, there's some issues there.
interesting. Yeah. So, yeah, can I bring up another topic too about our
Yeah, we got about
Bennington?
5 more minutes, so go for it.
All right, yeah, the Bennington City Council. I've been watching a few of the council meetings, online, and I've been listening to, a few of them call up our local WMBF radio station, and
Oh, yeah, fun
hearing some of
guys.
the comments. Um, a couple of the things. The big concern right now is just that with law enforcement, and obviously the governor sending
Hmm.
down and pretty much forcing the communities to change something, I mean, or do something. I don't even really actually know. It just seems like he basically says, fix a problem. Don't know what the problem is, but you've got it, and so let's do it. And anyway, I'm listening to different council, people talk about, either it is black individuals within the community, or they're talking about, law enforcement, kind of in a general term.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I realize that they're doing is that they are bringing sheer complete emotion into this arena of change, and they're
Hmm.
not actually making any sort of specific details on how policy would be changed. And just to give you an example, I mean, I was listening to, was it John Burns?
Hmm.
He
He's
was
also a
on,
city councilman. Go ahead.
yes, he is. And he was talking about um, just a random situation where he had a group of construction workers, right, working on one of his properties. And what he did, he
Hmm.
left the keys on the countertop, and two of the guys went in, and he says, okay, just go through the window and you can open up the door and then get your stuff in there and then work on it. Well, two of the guys were white. They went and they did it. And then it came to the black guy. He told the same thing. And all of a sudden there was this, moment of silence on the phone with John. And he says, well, the guy goes to him. He says, well, I'm not going to do, I'm not going to do that. He says, I can't, somebody's going to call the police and get him. So anyway, what it was is that there, it was a big nothing out of the story, except it was supposed to invoke an emotion and a feeling, that, a black individual doing the same thing as a white person is going to be discriminated against, and they are going to be at a higher risk of being shot or some sort of altercation happening with law enforcement, because of the color of their skin. And this is a council, man, right?
Yeah.
Invoking emotion into a situation. And so what I'm trying to say is that the government, the Cuomo, has sent down an order to make policy within our cities, right? And we have council people who are not really coming up with any sort of ideas, to actually make law enforcement better or to make us more efficient. Instead, they're actually putting in, an emotional, appeal to try to get people to, feel a certain way. And this is an extremely dangerous thing to do, because what sort of legislation can you possibly push through that is actually going to benefit our community and law enforcement when it's based upon a fearful emotion?
Well,
And on top
that's,
of
yeah.
that, there was another thing that he mentioned, though. He
Yeah.
says that we need more black cops. And he just said, period. And he says, if we can't get them in our area, then we have to go outside the area to get more,
Okay.
black police
Wait a
officers.
minute. Wait a minute. Jason, I got to say something about that.
Yeah, sure.
Because I have spoken to many police officers and the administration of the local police. This is in the Binghamton area for people who don't know, and in the southern tier of New York. And I've asked them, and I've done this actually, I did a ride along. I was asking them on the record about this as well. Why are there so few, and actually none, officers of color in the Binghamton police force? And the answer is the same answer I get from the Democratic Party and progressives that I've asked about that in this region. And the answer is because they're told not to. Because there is an active and persistent effort by progressives, in particular Black Lives Matter and Plot, to tell them not to join the police force, because if they join the police force, that is selling out. And that's the reason why we don't have officers of color, because they're considered a sellout if they join the police force rather than being seen as someone who can contribute and possibly even fix, if there are errors and issues, to help fix them. And there's the difference of the mindset. They're saying you can't do this. It goes back to what I said at the very beginning of the show. Agency. This organization is saying you aren't black and you can't support someone because it's not part of their political agenda. You don't have that choice anymore, and you can't make a difference without doing what they say. And when you hear people say that, that is insulting, that is problematic. It is not to anyone's benefit except that political organization. So when people say, well, we need black officers, when I hear Councilman John Burns say, we need black officers. Well, I say to Councilman John Burns, who is not a progressive, I do want to make that clear, I would say to him, well, John, turn around to members of your own party and tell them to stop telling the community to not be involved. And then you'll see officers, black officers, on the police force, because they're the very reason why there aren't any. And that's just something that needs to be said.
You're definitely right on that. I mean, it's just another problem, I think, that there's definitely a more hostility towards black officers when it comes to the progressives, definitely trying to destroy them. And the thing is, their number one purpose is to disband all police officers and make the job as completely as difficult as possible, so nobody wants to be a cop. And the people who really don't want to be a cop are black individuals, because they are the most highly criticized of the progressive groups of anybody, and that may be a little more my opinion. I'm not, but it would make sense, because the thing is that if they're embracing, the identity politics, then they can't actually have, black officers on equal footing with white officers, because that doesn't fit a narrative for them. And so they got to make sure that black officers do not join the job. And so that definitely is true. The other point I was going to make, though, as far as, just overall saying that you have to have, black individuals, I think this is a bad idea, because, again, this is about identity politics. And I don't believe because what you're telling the individuals that police are in contact with, you are identifying those individuals as being racist themselves. And so the only reason that you would want a black officer over a white officer is because the people within the community don't like people that are white. And so you are changing your behavior because of other people are racist. And so that, I don't believe, should ever be done. You don't change your policies or your behavior because of the character of another individual. I mean, if there happens to be, a demographic or a certain, population within a certain part of the city or anywhere that find individuals of a certain race, and they do not like them or they don't feel comfortable with them, then you don't change your behavior. You only show them who you are, your content of your character, and you be kind and you treat kindly and you treat these people with respect. And that's the sort of attitude you had. You just don't simply ever give in to the narrative that, oh, we have to have black, more black individuals because it would make our community a better place. No, you have people with character, better people in the community or better people in law enforcement, and then you get a better community. So again, the identity politics and letting into even that narrative, should not go. But you're 100% right, though, is just that the pressure that they need to divide us and to make sure that, like I said, that black and white individuals aren't, working hand in hand in law enforcement is definitely what, Citizen Action Plot and all those progressives would definitely want to have happen. They want to divide us as much as they can. But again, like I said, that narrative, we definitely have to focus on character of the individuals and really get away from of race and of identity politics.
Okay. I agree with you very much on that thought. And Jason, I want to thank you, by the way, for calling in. By the way, folks, anyone can call in. Jason, we're going to free up the line, see if anyone else wants to call in. Of course, folks, you can leave a message. You can type it in at Facebook or YouTube. You can contact us by text, either at the 607 242 1582, or you can reach us, of course, but MV Consulting. MV Consult on Twitter. So thanks a lot, Jason. I want to thank you for your comments today, okay?
Yeah, thank you. Have a good one.
All right. And so, folks, so we're covering a lot of ground here, and we're talking locally. What we're seeing locally is what we're seeing throughout the nation. And very much, as John has just mentioned, as Jason just mentioned here, we're seeing that the same idea. Oh, we just have to have a black police officer, as said by John Burns, as he's mentioning from his conversation on WMBF just in the last week or so. That's kind of short-sighted, because it's the same thing as saying, well, we need Kamala Harris to be vice president from the Democratic side. It's about the box they're filling, not do we have qualified people? Are these the best people? And at the same time, we have that same faction of the left saying, or a similar faction of the left saying, well, you can't do that. You don't have the agency to do that. We won't allow you to do that. And if you do it, well, you're a traitor to your own race. Again, it's about intimidation. It's about fear. It's about taking away someone's agency. But I want to hear, and I know that the left, many members of Plot, I know members of Black Lives Matter, I know that politicians on the left and the right, they watch this show. Many of them watch it live. They don't speak about it, but they do, because they tell me that personally and privately, because I do know almost all the politicians in this region, pretty much everybody. So they've told me, they listen, they hear what you're saying, they're hearing what I say. They read your comments, they see everything that's going on. And a lot of them agree with us. They're just afraid to say something about it. One of my cameras is about to die, so bear with me. I'm going to switch over. Oops, there. Oops, had to switch cameras here because one of my cameras is dying. So we're going to be finishing up in like 8 minutes here. And in these 8 minutes, I again ask for members of the left, members of Black Lives Matter Plot, speak up. If you think what I'm talking about is wrong, if you think I've misunderstood your organization, if you think I misunderstand what you're looking for, if your agenda is not being properly mentioned here, I'm open. The line is open. I do not limit anyone. I don't take away anyone's comments. I don't censor them, and I'm not going to not let you speak. But I've noticed that consistently, they don't want to say anything, which makes me believe I'm right, that I have properly detailed this situation and their outlook and their view. Whether you're talking about in Seattle with the CHOP or the CHAZ, and by the way, I'll give you another example of what I'm talking about. Why did the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone change its name to the Capitol Hill Organized Protest? And why do we see it being called a protest? Because that sells better. Because they're trying to convince people of an outlook that isn't true. They were an autonomous zone because they want to defund the police, because they want to reject the capitalist democratic system, representative democratic system of the United States, because they want to reject our lives as they exist. That's why they became an autonomous zone. And when that autonomous zone was shown to be a failure, when that experiment of socialism and progressivism based on identity politics completely failed, as it has, because there are 19-year-old got killed, because women are being raped, because there is extortion going on, because there are fights and violence going on, as is being reported by multiple news media, and I'm not talking about on the right, we're talking about on the left. Their media is reporting this, and when this experiment is shown to be failing, they switch their name and went to the organized protest, because a protest doesn't have to succeed. It's just a protest. But guess what? When you have a protest, and that protest is based on violence, and when you take over a territory That is violence. When you take away the ability for 500 homeowners to be able to travel to and from work and live their lives in America because you have occupied their homes, an occupation, when you occupy something, when it's an occupation, that is in fact violent. And so they believe in violence, but their protest, so it's not a protest. It is what it was at the beginning, an autonomous zone, an attempt at that. It is a failure, but they keep changing the goalposts. They keep changing the ideas so you can't hold them to what they are doing until they have succeeded in taking over. Because that's ultimately their goal. They want to take over. They want you to have no power. You have no agency unless they have given it to you. That's how I see it, based on all the evidence and everything I've been talking about. All the links will be there. You can read it for yourself. This is coming from Al Jazeera. This is coming from Washington Post, New York Times. All the sources that I read through and listen to in a week and every day, this is what they're saying. They may not be honest enough to you to tell you that, but that's what they're saying because it's there. All you have to do is read it and not look at just one source of news media, but look at all of them and look at the live feeds and ask yourself the question, gee, where's my agency? Do I have agency without them approving of it? Try it. Do me a favor. If you happen to be a person of color, if you happen to be a woman, go on to a site that is controlled, or one of the channels that are controlled by Antifa, Black Lives Matter, plot. Say you don't agree with something that they believe in, something they're telling you you must do. Like if you happen to be white, tell them you will not apologize for your race because no one should apologize for being born a certain skin color. Watch them tell you how much of a racist you are. Watch them tell you that you have no voice in this and that your voice doesn't matter. And that tells you exactly what they truly believe. You are not important unless you believe and say what they want you to say. They are about control. And we need to call that out. We really need to call it out. We need to highlight the contradictions there. Because they can't hide from them if you bring it up. But they sure as hell try not to bring it up. And that's aggravating to me. Because no one should be told they have to apologize for being born. No one should be told that they are lesser because of the skin color or their gender or their identity. And at the root of the core of these organizations that are changing America, yeah, you are. You are less than something. If you happen to be straight, you are less than someone who is gay. If you are whatever gender, you are less than someone who is gay or someone who is transgendered. That's not saying that these people are bad. It's that this organization, this political organization, is ranking people based on these criteria, which I believe is absolutely wrong. That's the worst way to look at people. That's the worst way to look at human beings, especially Americans. Your value is not dependent on what someone else thinks. Your value is yours. And you make up your choices in your life, not some political organization. Never. But that's my way of looking at it. I've got 2 minutes left here. You know, I kind of see this. It just came out. I mean, we were talking, it just came into the news. We're now seeing that syrup and rice are racist. You know, Uncle Ben's rice, Aunt Jemima, a syrup, Mrs. Butterworth, syrup. And we see companies that are terrified of being labeled by these organizations with the feared racist. It's racist. We're tearing down statues of Civil War individuals from the Civil War, even when those individuals were either black, like the Massachusetts 54th, which was desecrated, or statues that are being torn down of like Ulysses Grant, who fought against Confederates, which apparently the left hates. Okay. Does that make any sense? Is that not contradictory? It's this lack of understanding and this lack of willingness to understand that I hope has come across today as what I'm talking about. You have agency in your life. You do not get that from an organization. You definitely don't get it from the government. The government will never make you better you. Government will interfere with your life and will stop you. This is one of the reasons why I believe in small government. It's a Republican tenet. Smaller government is better for individuals because you know your life better than the government does. That is not what we're hearing from the left. The left believes that a village needs to be in charge, and in particular, the village is smarter than you. To quote or to paraphrase from Hillary Clinton, the village needs to raise your kids, or in other words, the government needs to be in charge. You are not smart enough to do anything. What did Obama say? You didn't build that. Really? Yeah. Millions of small business owners did build it. They did it themselves. The government doesn't do it. You do. Take your agency back, folks. Stop these organizations from telling you what is or what is not black or white or Hispanic or gay or straight or transgender. They don't get to choose your life. You have the agency in your life. You don't have to have their contradictions. Life is difficult enough. We're all human beings. We have emotions. We have our own contradictions. We don't need the contradictions of a political organization with an agenda. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. But I thank you for joining me in this episode of No Soundbites Allowed. I look forward to the continuing comments, whether it's on Facebook, on YouTube, whether you send me a text. I look forward to hearing from more of what you have to say about this and the conversation we're always having. I will be back next Sunday at 2:30. I will look forward to being able to speak with you all again. And remember, you can always call into the show and let's talk more. There's a lot more to go on. All right, folks. I want everyone to be well. I want you to have a great Father's Day. And for those of us who have fathers that are no longer with us, please, I hope today is a day of great memories about your dad, like I have with my own dad. I think that's just really important to remember as well today. All right, folks, I thank you. I want you to be well. And everybody, you have a great day.